Uh, Good morning, everybody. Um, oh, it's not on the screen. Oh, it is. Okay. S sorry? Okay. Okay. So I can see it scaled on the screen down below. I will start anyway. So can you raise a hand if you're listening for my presentation yesterday in the morning? Okay, cool. Who knows what Octant project is? Okay, we have a handful of hands. Who knows who Degens are? Degens, yeah, in general. Like, what? Okay. So, the last question I have for you: who knows about the game Dungeons and Dragons? Okay, so I think we have a room with enough context. So, Degens and Dragons are nothing like Dungeons and Dragons, but we have this story and the meme that we're trying to tell to the world. So, can the world exist without Octant? Like, you probably know a little bit about it, but I'm going to be talking more later. And just to let you know how this presentation is going to go, I'm going to talk about Degens and Dragons, then I'm going to talk a little bit about what Octant has been so far, and then I'll talk about how we're going to go forward with this. And so world definitely can exist without Octant. People will use crypto. Public goods will be funded somehow. But what if we create Octant, and what if we create a mechanism for sustainable public goods funding? So the issues we're trying to address go much deeper than crypto. It includes questions: how do we create social impact? How do we change the modern layer of society? And how we fund what matters today? Most people seek maximization of their capital. That's how capitalism works. So what we're trying to do is pretty hard in the modern world, because it goes against the grain, it goes against how people think about things. So let's get to it. We call the dragons projects who accumulated substantial amount of capital in crypto. The reason we call them the dragons is because dragons usually sit on a pile of gold, and they don't want to get out of that pile of gold. They want to sit on this pile of gold forever. They usually shape direction and potential of the crypto ecosystem. So just a little preview what I'm going to be talking about a bit later, and for those who know what Octant is, it's going to be obvious, but we are Golden Foundation, who has substantial capital, and we're using this capital to fund public goods. And so we think that other projects like Golden Foundation could do the same using the technology that we're working on. To expand this metaphor, I'd like to say there are other dragons, the modern day dragons. They're big tech corporations or hedge funds that accumulated also substantial amount of capital, even incomparable with the crypto. That's the result of like systemic change that happened in the last 50 years. We have hedge funds who control the game, and a lot of people cannot actually, even if you're smart enough, it's very hard for you to use equity markets and stock markets to break out of poverty, because the system is rigged and hedge funds control most of the stock markets. And as a result of 21st century, we have all these big tech corporations that definitely create a lot of value for the world, but at the same time, they're very much profit motivated, and the decisions usually made with the profit in mind, not with the community in mind. That's why Web3 exists in the first place, right? So some of the dragons are not corporations, but wealthy individuals, and they have significant influence over various industries. There are also crypto individuals who, as their dragon counterparts, could be pretty good and help sustain public goods or create more positive impact in the space. Now, for a moment, I'd like to talk about this term called financial nihilism. That's related to what I just said about. Most of the people see crypto and people in crypto as like see crypto as a way to get rich quick. And the reason for this, like there's this article wrote by Travis King called "Financial Nihilism." Who doesn't know who knows what nihilism is? Okay, everybody knows, right? So I guess you can sense what financial nihilism means. Like the idea is you try to get as much money as possible in your hands. But it's important to understand that this behavior is partially a result of like a response to systemic risks. The modern economical situation put a lot of young individuals in a tough spot where savings for a house or starting a family is very hard. So this idea of financial nihilism is related to the fact that upward mobility for a lot of people in the world, and also like Americans, because this is the analysis based on the American market, but I think it's generally true for most of the world, that it's very hard to buy a house. And financial nihilism also goes in hand with something like approach called populism. And populism usually refers to people who are disregarded by the modern system. And the idea of financial nihilism is basically saying, if like going to work and making money doesn't work for me, I'm going to do something different. So in terms of populism, you're going to vote for like some not very good candidate. In terms of financial system, you're going to buy a meme coin, expecting to get like 10x or 20x return. So these are some graphs from, they're not very good quality though, from this article. So this is like around 1960, I think. And we see kind of like the price of the houses, and like in this range between, I can really see that. I think it's 70s and 80s, like a lot of boomers, and some of the Gen X generation bought the houses. And then we see like the crisis in houses, and then it goes a little bit down. But basically, the main idea is that the young people cannot really afford buying houses at the same price as it was before. And that graph also represents the share of total real estate value depending on like different generations. So you can see like you can see a very specific trend in how the value is distributed between different generations. So it's not a surprise that a lot of people turn to crypto expecting high returns. So now, what it has to do with Degens? That's supposed to be a GIF. I don't know why it's not playing out. Maybe it's loading. But what you're supposed to see, there's like a guy with two axes, and he's like screaming and jumping from like a big rock. Oh yeah, there it is. So I guess like what I'm trying to show with this meme is that like what I explained just now, right? Dragons hold the majority of the funds, but the value originally comes from the community as a signal, like we value this thing, we value this project. And Degens, they embody the spirit of innovation and risk-taking that defines the crypto world. And so the willingness to embrace the uncertainty in risk is kind of what, in a way, makes this space vibrant. And like what I asked in the beginning, who knows who Degens are, I'd like to make like a very, very clear difference between Degens and scammers, right? So this is not the same thing. There may be people who are new to this space. Scammers are bad actors that we don't want in the system, but Degens are different. They are usually like people who are buying and investing and participating in different chain activities and generally creating this like vibrant space and community. And we can like say that some chaos to lead into new trends and paradigm shifts. Vitalik Buterin wrote 2 articles a couple of months ago. One is called Degen Communism, and another one is about meme coins. And so his ideas are very much aligned with what we are talking about. So we want to fund public goods, but we are kind of niche. And Degens have this remarkable coordination potential. So we're trying to combine those two things, bringing the capital from the Degens and tapping into the potential of the Degens vibrant communities and basically merging them together. So yeah, as I said, Degens are risk takers. Basically, Degens represent the communities, right? Because Dragons with their capital, if they're without the community, they're basically nothing. They want people to use their products. They want people to be a part of the ecosystem. They want build on top of their ecosystems. And Dragons are entities with significant capital. So what we're trying to do is to create capital-efficient mechanisms and games to engage with Degens while creating, while simultaneously funding socially impactful ventures and public goods. And for that, we want to use collective intelligence to signal impactful projects through mechanisms like quadratic funding and similars. Who knows what quadratic funding is? So for those who don't know, quadratic funding is a mechanism that is usually used to fund public goods. And the idea of this mechanism is essentially like you're putting a price on a public good, and you're voting in a way for it, but every next vote is more expensive than the previous one. And this is achieved through a basic square root function, right? If you ever saw a square root function, so the first vote is cheap, the next vote is more expensive, and further on and on. And so what it allows to do is to, from one point of view, actually giving something, so putting a price, so people will have to be willing to take part of their money or capital and actually fund what matters to them. But from the other point of view, it doesn't give a lot of power to Dragons, so it doesn't allow you to buy, to have the same amount of votes as, like basically it doesn't allow to have more significant amount of voting power. So to kind of finish this story, I'd like to quote this phrase. I don't know where it's coming from, but I saw it in Spider-Man, and I really like it. So with great power comes great responsibility. It's in a little bit utopian, because kind of we know how the world works right now, and usually who sit in a pile of gold, they usually don't want to give it away or even put it to work so it funds impactful ventures. But we're optimists. We're techno-optimists. We are thinking that is possible, and I guess Golden Foundation is one example of those. So we think that the capital must be either redistributed or at least put to work, so the returns of this big amounts of capital can be used to find more important and more impactful products. So that was the first part of my presentation. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Octant is and how it was created. So Golden Foundation is the first dragon. Originated from a successful token swap in 2016. So we hold 100,000 ETH, and what we're doing with this capital, we put into the proof of stake mechanism in Ethereum and creating a renewable funding stream. So going back to like everything that I said before, there are projects that are funding public goods now these days in Web3 and outside. But the main problem with these projects is this funding is not sustainable. So if you want to work on something that you really care about, but you don't have a revenue stream, it's really hard to rely on something like Gitcoin. That's why we believe that we need to create more sustainable mechanisms, and the idea is capital-based funding is more sustainable long-term compared to donation-based funding. And also the mechanism how people raise funding is also very hard, because they have to ask for donation all the time instead of having like sustainable revenue stream coming to them on a continuous basis. So our goals were basically create a sustainable stream of funding, align with the community and what they want to fund, and avoid centralization risks, right? Because there are a lot of philanthropies and funds that actually do this, but usually they choose what exactly to fund. So that's our mission. If you were on my presentation yesterday morning, you probably saw this. So we are trying to create this SPGF movement, Sustainable Public Goods Funding. And our mission is not only to fund public goods, but also empower individuals. So we're trying to find a balance. How do we both create a mechanism to fund what matters, but also reward people for participating in the system? A little bit about like how Octant works in general. For those who don't know. So we are running recurring public goods funding rounds called epochs. Right now, we run them every 3 months, and we reward users for participation. So distribution of these rewards happens between matching fund, which goes to public goods. Where's this? Yes, recipient project donation. Funds matched, and user rewards. So user rewards can just withdraw the value that is assigned to them, but they can also choose to donate part of these rewards to public goods. So effectively, Octant users are the ones who decide how the matching fund is distributed. And matching fund is substantial. So if you donate a small amount of funds, you can actually get a big leverage. They could be like 10x, 20x. And yeah, so we're staking it here, it goes in here, and that's basically the high level how it works. And in order for you to participate in the system, you need to lock GLM token in the application, which acts as a gated mechanism to reward the community and against the bad actors. So yeah, that's basically what I just explained. Participants claim user rewards or give away to public goods projects. Donated user rewards are matched with the matching fund given the leverage, and the projects that we fund are community driven. So there is a vote that decides who will be funded, and then there is a vote who and how much funding those projects will get eventually. High-level picture of what we achieved so far. So we generated more than 3,000 ETH in the last year. So we ran our first funding round July last year, yeah. So we ran 4 funding rounds for epochs, and the ETH that we accumulated was used to fund them. So combined user rewards that went to the community and the matching fund, almost 2,000 ETH. I don't know where it's, but it says received by public goods projects. It's more than 1,100 ETH, and user received a little bit over 600 ETH for 1 year. So if we translate it into dollars, so it's almost $3 million received by public goods project during the year. And also we run something called community rounds, where we basically partner with some community in the space. We allocate some amount of rewards from the total yield, and then they mobilize the community and fund what matters to them. So we run a couple of successful rounds with a couple of DAOs like SheFi. Right now, we are running around with Purple DAO. If you know about the project and you're on Farcaster, check it out because they're very active over there. And you can see some of the examples of the project we funded. Right now, it's over 50 projects, I think, in general. But you probably know some of them. There is a Gitcoin, Hypercerts, a Tor browser, L2Beat, some of the Web3 libraries like Web3.js. So the main focus has been so far on Web3 and some of the privacy-oriented products. Are there any? I'd like to pause for a second and ask if there are any questions like about this part. Yeah.
So if you received 3,000 ETH and the user rewards and the matching fund received 1,755, where does that difference in like 1,300 ETH go to?
So there's a part that goes to the community fund that is used to run this community rounds. Another part is 25% is operational costs that allows us to cover the staking operations and the development team. And during this period of time, there's like an algorithm that is more complex. So in the 4 rounds, we were changing the algorithm every time. Our original idea was to give part of the rewards to users, give the matching fund, and then everything else we were going to put into the staking more to create more sustainable funding streams. So on the second epoch, like substantial part went over there. And the third epoch we actually made, and the fourth epoch, we made this matching fund and user rewards much bigger. So basically everything that is over there went to the community rounds, operational cost, and extra staking. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think I'll continue, and then we'll have like a couple of minutes for the questions in the end. So going back to the Degens and Dragons, we want to empower Dragons and create mechanism for active provision of capital towards public goods funding and create more sustainable funding streams. So right now, Octant V1 is just one instance that runs on our staking operations, and we have only our community who has the power to vote, and only like a certain amount of project. What we want to do is we want to expand this model. We want to replicate and mobilize more Degens with different existing protocols in social games, and empower more crypto native to participate in public goods fundings. So this is like a very high level overview of how this looks like. So we have a couple of actors in the system. We have the Dragons I was talking about. We have this, actually not precise division between regions and Degens, but the idea of regions are people who already like care or know about public goods, and Degens are these guys with access who don't know about public goods yet, but they might get interested in this. And I don't know if any of you know Kevin Awoki and his work, but in one of his books, he wrote this Degens to region journey. So you like come to the space, you try to make money, but actually over time you join a DAO, you start caring about the space and start contributing. So in a way, that's kind of like a mechanism to turn Degens to regions. So on this side of the diagram, we have Dragons that deposit big capital that goes to the yield generating strategies like staking, the rewards coming back, and they share rewards with the people who are already in the system, right? Who, for example, lock GLM token in a way it works right now. And they have power to vote and fund public goods projects. On the other hand, we have Degens who are not a part of this, and they can also deposit capital, and they also use different yield generating strategy. But the idea, they also put some percentage of yield to sustainable public goods funding. And so there could be DeFi protocols or whatever you can think about, but also they get certain reward for this contribution. So it's like a game where you both give and get something back. And whatever is accumulated in sustainable public goods funding eventually goes to projects that create some impact. And those projects create impact. We measure it, and which is very, very hard problem, probably one of the hardest problems in the public goods space funding, and that creates like flourishing ecosystems. That's our idea about the next iteration of Octant. This is a little more detailed diagram. By the way, question, who knows what impact bonds are or social impact bonds? Nobody? One, no. Okay. I think I'm going to explain it in a minute. So comparing like to the previous diagram, so these are the Dragons that deposit like substantial amount of capital on different capital sources. These are the Degens that deposit like smaller amount of capital. The difference here is like Dragons, for example, claim this operational costs because they need to sustain the operations that they run. and Degens, they claim like big amount of this yield, but certain percent goes to the protocol, the Octant protocol. And so there's like a withdrawal layer. It's more of a technical part that needs to pump like the body pumps blood into the mechanism. And so over here we have like mechanism that will divide it between different volts, between different, something we call transformers, for example. Some dragons might decide to convert yield from one token to another token. And we have this like incentives layer that actually allows people to participate in the system. So, and over there we have this mechanism where regions, or actually some of the Degens who already become a part of the of some Dragon ecosystem, they can deposit token and they can be rewarded for participating in this. So it's important to say that the idea of this Dragon is dragons have to have some substantial amount of capital, right? But usually they also have a token, and the token is not always used. And there are a lot of examples of the governance tokens in the space that don't have any utility. And so in a way, we're trying to create the utility and put the capital to work. So like a two sides equation. They want to mobilize the community. They want to bring more funding to the ecosystem. This screen is saying my time is up. So the idea is that is all okay to fund public goods, and eventually both Degens and Dragons and regions, they can receive something called social impact bonds. I'm just going to say what that thing means. So this is a financial instrument that usually used to fund socially impactful ventures by private capital. But then if this project is successful, usually philanthropists or governments pay back to this project. So it's not necessarily successful. It's not necessarily an investment, but it's usually a way to fund some public goods on the government level. Okay, so I'm just going to skip this one. It's more like a conclusions about future of public goods funding. And thank you. I don't know if I have any time for questions.
Do you want to take one question while we start getting Jan set up? So
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
How do you measure the success of...
Sorry.
So how do you measure the success of this whole funding and goods, and what's, let's say, some characteristic that we would say is net positive for the ecosystem?
So right now we're working with a number of projects that allow us to like get the feedback. So it's not really numerical right now. So we get in either like communication feedback about what kind of impact they created, what they actually do. And we are asking people to provide a feedback on the platform that we are working with. Another thing is that we are working with the projects that, for example, created impact metrics for optimism to try to replicate the same model at the a little smaller scale. But I think like you ask one of the fundamental questions, because impact measurement is very hard, and you cannot compare all the projects using the same metrics. So it's like the ongoing discussion, and we are always open to new proposals to improve that part.
We have one more question. Anybody? One more burning question? No Degen questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Artem.
I think there's...
Did you have a question? Okay.
Like in your graph, you were like,
What's the what?
the yield. You said like Degens take out like big yield, and then like the dragons give little yield. So it's like
It really depends on the different yield mechanisms and yield strategies. So it could be different. It's kind of a part of the game. Yeah.